So, today I'm going to discuss the poem Diary of a Palestinian Poet by Mahmoud Darwish. Before we proceed, uh, let me share my screen for a So, as you can see, I have on my first slide the title of the and some pictures of Mahmoud Darwish himself. Now, let me give you a little background about the purpose of Darwish behind writing this poem. So, Mahmoud Darwish expresses his angst, his identity crisis, his pain, his wound of dislocation from his homeland, Palestine. The Palestinian people and Israeli Arabs had been and have been in continuous war since the foundation of the State of Israel, 1948. Now, in my second slide, I have given you a depiction of two-state solution presented by the UN. So the United Nations came up with this solution that Palestine will be divided into two states, one for Israel, one for the Palestinian people. But the Palestinian people always felt that the solution was biased and it favored the Arab Israelis who were Jews. Since then, there has been a continuous battle, resistance, and violence upon Palestinian people, and they have to leave their homeland, their homes, continuously. So, as in my third slide, I have mentioned what kind of solution had been offered by the UN. So, after the foundation of the State of Israel in 1948, Palestinian people had to you know had to go out of their homeland. They had to you know suffer the atrocities of the Israeli armies. So they were uprooted from their homelands, and the Israeli armies laid violence upon them. They they took control of the West Bank, East Jerusalem, Gaza Strip, Syria's Golan Heights, Egyptian Sinai Peninsula. Since then, the Palestinian people were very much conscious about their culture, about their heritage, about their homeland, had to face dislocation and uprootment and violence and torture. Now, glimpses from Darwish's life. Darwish himself had witnessed uprootedness in 1948. Then he also witnessed the atrocities led by Zionist militias. In one of his poems written in his childhood, he asks a Jewish boy, "You can play in the sun as you please, and I have your toys, but I can't. You have a house, and I have none. You have celebrations, but I have none. Why can't we play together?" Since Darwish's childhood, he had a temperament of resistance through poetry. And even his father was, threatened by the Jewish Israeli armies to ask his son to stop writing poems. But Darwish did not stop. He wrote the Palestinian Declaration of Independence in 1988 and worked very closely with Edward Said. So Palestinian, the PLO, or the Palestine Liberation Organization, was formed in 1964, which advocated for the declaration of the State of Palestine. In his poem, Identity Card, written in 1964, he again he again announces his Palestinian identity. He gives a voice of resistance. He delivers a notion of national consciousness, his Palestinian nationality, which was attacked by the state of Israel. So Mahmoud Darwish is regarded unofficially as the national poet of Palestine. And his poems have a music of resistance against the Israel conquest. Some people criticize him, accuse him of anti-Semitism, but he has a response for that. Now, in the next slide, I have given some lines based on the declaration that Mahmoud Darwish had written for the Palestinian organization, which worked for the proclamation of the Palestine. Here in my discussion, I have written Mahmoud Darwish as MD. So MD, or the poet, rebels through poetry. The beauty of Gaza is that our voices do not reach it. Nothing distracts it, nothing takes its fist from the enemy's face. Gaza is devoted to rejection. Hunger and rejection, thirst and rejection, displacement and rejection, torture and rejection, siege and rejection, death and rejection. These are some of his lines from Silence for Gaza. As you have noticed, and you must be aware that Gaza had been continuously under violence, under bombardments, under forceful armed uprootment of the Palestinian people. Now, in 1967, the Palestinian people, they gathered and they raised military violence upon the Israelis, but they could not succeed. The Israeli armies were victorious and they conquered all these strips of land. Majority of the Palestinian area is under the Israel conquest. Prior to the start of the war, attacks conducted against Israel by fledgling Palestinian guerrilla groups based in Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan had increased, leading to costly Israeli reprisals. So the Palestinian armies, they were, some guerrilla groups were functioning on the land of the Palestine, and they attacked Syria, which was a violent rebellion. And fledgling out here means immatured, not yet formed as an organization. But that had costed Syria a lot. There was also a lot of bloodshed and aftermath for the people of Syria. Now, Edward Said's essay, The Question of Palestine, written 1969, becomes very important in this context. From his essay, I would like to select this very important line. The very mention of the name, on the one hand, constitutes for the Palestinian and his partisans an act of important and positive political assertion, and on the other, for the Palestinians' enemies, it is an act of equally assertive, but much more negative and threatening denial. So, as the Palestinian people are rebelling against the conquest of their land, the majority of the land is being under the Israelis, Arab Israelis. So, Edward Said feels that this war is a positive assertion as well as for the people of Palestine, and it is also a threat. It is also a threatening denial, something negative for the people of Israel or the Israeli government. Another important line here, which embarks on the dynamic nature of Palestinian people. What is most important is the continuing avoidance or ignorance of the existence today of about 4 million Muslim and Christian Arabs who are known to themselves and to others as Palestinians. They make up the question of Palestine. So, the purpose of Edward Said's essay was to address that the land of Palestine exists, and who are the Palestine people, who are the Palestinians, and their history, their political history, and the violence that was brought to them. Edward Said and Mahmoud Darwish worked very closely, as I said. So Said wrote an essay on MD, on Mahmoud Darwish, and Darwish wrote Tibak or antithesis, homage to Edward Said. I have given a link to watch this video where Darwish is reading his homage to Edward Said. Some of the lines I have again mentioned here. So he mentions Edward Said as a friend, and also mentions the number of years that he had been friends with. Now, Edward Said writes about Mahmoud Darwish as a remarkable intelligence who played an important role in the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, which was established in 1964. For at least a decade, he was very close to Yasser Arafat, who was the leader of that organization, first an advisor, and then from about 1978 on as a member of the PLO Executive Committee. He never belonged to any political party. His modern wit, fierce political independence, and exceptionally refined cultural sensibility kept him at a distance from the frequent coarseness of Palestinian and Arab politics. Now, I want to talk about exile and homelessness here. In this context, the theories, the postulations given by Edward Said on exile and homelessness becomes seminal. So, according to Edward Said, this sort of homelessness or exile where the Palestinian people have to continuously leave their homes, have to witness the wreckage of their home, have to always be on move, and there is loss of security, loss of national security. Their well-being is continuously under threat. There is no growth, there is no future for the children. The most he feels that there is no words to explain the exile, the sense of exile and homelessness. And when we discuss about nationalism, the concept of exile will always come. Because the sense of nationalism is a sense of collective identity. And when there is uprootment, there is collective uprootment of its people, of a nation's people. So the nation protects, the nation gives security. And when there is, attack on the map of a nation, there is attack on its people. So, because both terms include everything from the most collective of collective sentiments to the most private of private emotions. So, as we will be progressing towards the poem, you will see that how Darwish's poetry of resistance against Israeli forces, how Darwish's poetry of uh, reclaiming his national identity is private and also collective assemblage of his sentiments. And there is always an exile's predicament. There is a doubt, there is a crisis, a kind of orphanhood which never leaves. Because the people are not coming back to their home. They are continuously moving. They are being violently attacked and tortured. Now, I found this essay by Hajar Mahmoud, which is titled as The Poetry of Darwish in the 1960s, Homeland and Exile. He analyzes Darwish's poetry and feels that Darwish expresses the fragmented identity of the Palestinian. Fragmented as the fragmentation of the map of the Palestinian people, of their homeland. Life is always scattered, discontinuous, and always having a rhythm of disturbance. Now, I have taken some of the important lines from the poem, and here in bulleted forms, I have laid down some meanings, but the poem is not limited to only these meanings. Now, the poet dedicates this poem to one of the female Palestinian revolutionaries, or a poet revolutionary, Padwa Tukan. This begins with a poem with, "We do not need to be reminded Mount Carmel is in us, and on our eyelashes the grass of Galilee." So he starts with the metaphors from Hebrew Bible. These places, Mount Carmel or the grass of Galilee, attain a very significant position in the Bible. And Mount Carmel and the grass of Galilee, these are some of the very significant landscape of the Palestinian land, which is now under Israeli conquest. So landscape, rivers, the topography of a nation contributes heavily to the formation of national consciousness and national identity, because it gives a sense of collective identity. Because all the people of that land, of that place, of that nation identifies or is associated with the topography of that place, with its landscape. Do not say we could run to her like a river. Do not say it. We and our country, one flesh and bone. Darwish here knows that a river is also a significant part of a nation. It is a medium of sustenance. Rivers are life-giving. But out here, he invents a metaphor to describe his private, collective emotions related to the land of Palestine. He's saying that his country is one flesh and bone, so he's portraying the inseparable bond between a people and its nation. Before June, we were not fledgling doves, so our love did not wither in bondage. Sister, these 20 years, our work was not to write poems, but to be fighting. Out here, the fledgling doves, this is a metaphor for the immature rebels. But Darwish is denying that they were immature rebels. These 20 years, their rebellion was not immature. These 20 years, they had written poetry. Poetry has always been a source of rebellion, a source of connectivity, of resistance for the people of Palestine. In 1948, the Arab Palestinians had to exile from their homes in 1948. And the poet writes this poem around 1960s. So there is a gap of 20 years. And throughout these 20 years, their rebellion had a cause. Their rebellion did not lack focus. In some of the next lines, he says, "The shadow that descends over your eyes, demon of a god, who came out of the month of June to wrap around our heads, the sun, his color is martyrdom, the taste of prayer. How well he kills, how well he resurrects." In this context, again, he is deconstructing the notion of God. God is a concept that we associate with life. He associates it with death, who kills and also resurrects. Now, this resurrection is the resurrection, implying to the resurrection of the Palestinian people. The rebellions are dying, but they are not reducing in numbers. After every fight, after every violent fight, the rebellions are not decreasing. They are fighting constantly to come back, to return to their home. They are being bombarded. Those people who are dying, those children who are dying, they are also heroes, according to Darwish. And we came to know what makes the voice of the nightingale a dagger shining in the face of the invaders. For the Palestinian people, poetry is a medium of presenting their angst, their violence, their sorrow, their pain, their wound, their identity of the identity, national identity, their connectivity with the land of Palestine. So poetry is definitely melodious, poetry has a rhythm, but poetry can also be raising violence. Poetry, through poetry, uprisings and revolutions can emerge. You sang your poems. I saw the balconies desert their walls, the city square extending to the midriff of the mountain. It was not music we heard. Through poetry, through the rhythm of poetry, he is expressing, he is talking about the bombardment, the destruction of war. That destruction would be very musical to the enemies, but for them, it was devastating. It was destruction. It was catastrophe from which they are never recovered. They are still recovering, and we don't know how long will it take for them. This land absorbs the skins of martyrs. This land promises wheat and stars. Worship it. We are its salt and its water. We are its wound, but a wound that fights. Sister, there are tears in my throat, and there is fire in my eyes. I am free. Through his poetry, he is declaring his sovereignty. He is claiming that he is free. He is boundless. He is limitless. But he cannot forget the sorrow of separation from his homeland. He feels that the people who are dying through the violent attacks and bombardments, tortures and uprootment, they are martyrs. And the martyrs should not stop their rebellion, should not stop their revolution until they claim what they deserve. So throughout his poem, he is expressing his relationship with his homeland. With his homeland becomes part of his identity. Ah, my intractable wound. My country is not a suitcase. I am not a traveler. I am the lover and the land is the beloved. He's saying that his wound is uncontrollable. His wound is singing a song of resistance. His wound is singing the song of rebellion. He doesn't want to leave his country. He doesn't want to be a constant traveler, always carrying his suitcase around, ready to move, ready to leave. He cannot pack up all the memories, all the identities, all the national, memories that is attached to the homeland and pack it up in a suitcase and leave. So in this way, he is, resisting to the idea of exile. And this becomes a personal, political, and social fight, and a personal, collective engagement with the idea of home. When he wrote this poem, he was separated from his homeland. So he had this constant separation from his anxiety of separation from his homeland, and a feeling of homelessness or an orphanhood. It is time for me to exchange the word for the deed, time to prove my love for the land and for the nightingale. For in this age, the weapon devours the guitar, and mirror, I have been fading more and more since at my back a tree began to grow. He is again emphasizing on armed rebellion, armed resistance. When I read that section, the music nowadays, it devours the guitar. He had written that, he had expressed that music can also be violent, can also be strong. So he is emphasizing on armed rebellion, and he feels that poetry is not, something to be not only just a medium of entertainment. It is a medium of a rebellion, of resistance, of change. At the last line, he says, in the last line, and in the mirror I have been fading more and more since at my back a tree began to grow. So again, when we think about the image of a tree, when we think of the Sydney fire, a tree is being associated with life, with abundance, growth, regeneration. So here the poet feels that the rebellion will keep on igniting and reigniting. It will never douse off. Palestinian people will never stop their resistance unless they feel they have been equally treated or at par with the Arab Israelis. We get a sense of equal resistance from the poet's voice in his poetry, and also a sense of collective national consciousness. He is asserting his Palestinian identity. So, according to Said, the sense of exile brings restlessness, movement, and constant sense of unsettlement, unfulfillment. We get to see that all these motives of being restless and change, when he says, I am not a traveler, he's constantly on the move. He is unable to settle. He is unable to feel secured. So his poetry, his poems bring out the sense of exile, bring out the sense of displacement and dislocation from homeland. I have given a link to view the interview, one of the interviews of Darwish. I hope you have enjoyed this lesson. You have taken some valuable inputs, and please feel free to share your comments. Thank you.